The General Hospital spoilers for Wednesday, September 3rd, suggest that Willow Tate's disappearance will be investigated, while Carly Spencer admits a major Drew Kane error. At Drew's house, a dark figure will loiter and prepare to fire another shot, but something may get in the way. If the gunman hears sirens, he or she may flee before they can completely eliminate Drew. Trina Robinson and Kai Taylor will argue what to do while remaining out of sight. Kai will prevent Trina from identifying herself too quickly, because they will not know what the gunman intends to do next. A 911 call will be received on Wednesday's show, bringing Dante Falconeri and Anna Devane to Drew's house to conduct this investigation. Will Trina and Kai be behind the 911 call, or could it be from a neighbor? There's a potential Kai and Trina will flee with the shooter, particularly if Trina suspects Curtis Ashford or Portia Robinson. Whatever the case, Dante and Anna will consider a long list of suspects, as almost everyone in town had a reason to go after Drew. In the meantime, Portia will make a dramatic statement. It could contribute to Trina's doubts in the coming episodes, since she will be concerned about Portia's capabilities. Willow's disappearance will be noticed by Elizabeth Baldwin at General Hospital, where she is supposed to be working. That will result in Liz interrogating Willow, who will eventually return with drenched hair from being out in the rain. Willow may lie about her location, particularly if she has been on Drew's property. Lucas Jones will have a warning for Elizabeth, which might be regarding Willow if he believes she is more dangerous than ever. Michael Corinthos will continue to oppose Willow and her unstable side, so he will speak with Brooklyn Quartermain about it at the Quartermain mansion. Michael's objective is to safeguard the children, therefore he'll do whatever he can to keep Willow away from Wiley and Amelia Corinthos. Michael may have an even stronger reason to do so if he believes Willow is responsible for Drew's death. It won't be long until Port Charles receives details on Drew's terrible ordeal, especially if he becomes an emergency patient at the hospital. There are good reasons to assume Drew will live, despite someone's best efforts to wipe him off the map, so keep an eye out for any medical breakthroughs. Carly Spencer will appear distressed after making a huge mistake with Drew. Jack Brennan may step in to help Carly deal with her latest issue, but it's unlikely that Carly fired the rounds in this whodunit. Brennan will also have an altercation with Colette Moreau, which may raise suspicions of sabotage. Brennan may worry if Colette is up to no good, while Vaughn alerts Jocelyn Jacks to the WSB's new mole problem. Colette is the one who leaks information, but she may pay the ultimate price when Brennan discovers the unsettling revelation. Until then, Britt Westbourne will endeavor to save Jocelyn and Vaughn from death. Britt will stall things for as long as possible, perhaps reminding Pascal that he should not make decisions without the boss agreement. General Hospital spoilers show that the anticipation is killing us, as teasers suggest Jocelyn, Josh Jacks and Vaughn's lives are still in danger on September 5th, even after Britt Westbourne's expected desperate burner phone call to Jason Morgan for assistance. Pascal has trapped them in the basement of the Five Poppies Hotel, and their fear of the worst suggests that the rescue will take longer than expected this week. Does this mean Britt and Jason fail to liberate them right away, or do they flee just to face a relentless pursuit back to Port Charles? With Jen Sidwell and his allies likely on their heels, may Joss unintentionally endanger her loved ones? General Hospital spoilers. Delayed rescue or ongoing threat. According to the September 5th previews, Joss and Vaughn are terrified for their lives, hinting that their experience will continue for the next week despite Britt's warning to Jason. If Britt returns to the cellar to summon Jason, the rescue may be hampered. Perhaps Pascal intervenes, or difficulties such as Britt's own captivity delay her release. This week's tensions could escalate without resolution, delaying their liberation until midweek or later. Fans think if Jason's shock on September 5th is related to discovering Joss' secret WSB position, which complicates the extraction. JH spoilers. Free but hunted. The chase begins? Even if Britt and Jason pull off a spectacular rescue this week, Joss and Vaughn's anguish on September 5th hints that liberation brings additional horrors, with Pascal, Sidwell, and their network identifying them as targets. Knowing too much about the Five Poppies' actions, they become loose ends, with foes threatening to find them. Escaping Croatia does not stop the nightmare. It may turn into a high-stakes chase, compelling Joss and Vaughn to go underground or face assassins at home. That's correct. Their low-key excursion overseas might land them in hot federal waters if they bring the trouble back to the United States. General Hospital spoilers. Enemies invade Port Charles. Is the family in peril? If Joss takes Pascal or Sidwell's henchmen to Port Charles, her family, Carly Spencer, Jason and others, could suffer the consequences, turning the town into a battleground. Her WSB ties through WSB Chief Jack Brennan may provide security, but disclosing them jeopardizes Carly's romance with Jack. Will Joss' homecoming harm Trina Robinson and the Ashfords? This might spark a broader conflict, with Sonny Corinthos joining in. What say you GH fans? Will Joss escape endanger her loved ones? Share your opinions with us, and stay tuned for more GH news and teasers coming soon. Willow's unexpected departure stunned everyone, putting Port Charles into full turmoil as doubt and suspicion swirled around every corner. Willow was last seen in the hospital, finishing up a late shift, weary but seemingly in good spirits. However, when Michael arrived to pick her up, she was nowhere to be seen. Her phone went straight to voicemail, her bag was missing, and none of the surveillance cameras around the hospital provided any concrete answers. Michael felt a knot form in his stomach, and within minutes, calls began to fly to Carly, Drew, and others close to Willow. Something didn't add up, and Michael suspected this wasn't a random disappearance. Carly arrived at the hospital, panicked and barely holding it together. She could see Michael's panic on his face, which reflected her own anxieties. She threw her arms around her kid, promising him that they'd locate Willow, but her trembling palms contradicted the calm tone she was attempting to project. Drew arrived shortly after, appearing equally concerned, but Carly saw there was something else behind his gaze, shame, perhaps, or something deeper. He avoided eye contact at first, pacing around the hospital lobby, appearing to look through his phone while plainly struggling with his thoughts. The police were summoned swiftly, and Detective Dante Falconeri wasted no time in initiating an inquiry. He questioned hospital employees, reviewed surveillance footage, and attempted to track Willow's movements. Her last documented sighting was at the nurse's station about 7:15 p.m., after which she appeared to vanish. The uncertainty weighed on everyone, but as the minutes passed into hours, tensions rose. Michael became increasingly agitated, demanding answers that no one seemed able to provide. It wasn't long before whispers started, quiet but harsh, regarding who might have been behind Willow's disappearance. Nina's name came up almost immediately. She had a difficult history with Willow and had clashed with Michael numerous times. Carly, surprised, dismissed that hypothesis before it could acquire traction. She knew Nina could be manipulative, but she never imagined her going this far. Still, Michael inwardly blamed Nina, his mind racing with terrible possibilities as he battled to remain calm for the sake of his children. Meanwhile, Carly continued to notice Drew's unusual behavior, and his distraction became impossible to ignore. Finally, when she could get him alone, she confronted him. "Drew, what are you not telling me?" she demanded, her voice filled with distrust and terror. He initially tried to dismiss her, arguing that he was just as concerned about Willow as everyone else. But Carly's instincts had always been razor-sharp, and she could tell he was keeping something back. After several painful minutes of quiet, Drew eventually disclosed a startling truth. He had made a bargain a few weeks earlier that he now believes may have endangered Willow. Carly froze, staring at him in shock, her heart thumping in her ears as his confession poured forth. He had been working with an unknown person connected to Valentine's business affairs, attempting to gain influence for a different problem involving Aurora Media. Drew didn't realize at the time that the same contact belonged to a dangerous network with a vested interest in keeping secrets hidden. Carly couldn't believe what she heard. Her rage erupted quickly, the weight of Drew's reckless decisions bearing down on her. She accused him of putting Willow's life in danger without realizing it. Drew attempted to justify himself, claiming that he thought he was protecting their family's future. But Carly was not buying it. "You should have told me," she said, her voice shaking as tears welled up in her eyes. "You should have trusted me before you got us into this mess." Drew's remorse was stifling, yet he couldn't change his decisions. They went to Michael and recounted what Drew had revealed, ready themselves for his response. Michael's outrage was swift and fierce. He felt deceived not only by Drew, but also by Carly, who kept secrets, even if unwittingly. He hated Drew for putting Willow in danger and demanded to know who this strange contact was and what they wanted. Dante overheard the heated argument and quickly refocused the investigation. He thought that if Drew's connection was even remotely related to organized crime or unlawful operations, Willow's disappearance might not have been random at all. This thought sent shivers down Carly's spine, making the entire matter even more urgent. They started looking through Drew's communications, bank records, and meetings, attempting to unearth even the smallest indication. Meanwhile, the remainder of Port Charles was buzzing with speculation. Nina learned of Willow's absence and raced to the hospital, apparently shaken despite her difficult connection with her daughter. Her anxiety, however, did not prevent her from clashing with Michael, who coldly told her to keep away from the probe. The tension between them boiled over, yet Nina's remorse was obvious, as if she feared her previous deeds had contributed to this moment in some way. As the hours passed, more unsettling bits emerged. Dante was able to track down a mystery text message sent to Willow's phone earlier that day, pushing her to meet someone in the hospital's lower parking garage to discuss something important about Michael. This was the last recorded activity on her phone. When security investigated the cameras, they discovered that the film in that exact region had been cleverly altered, indicating that someone had meticulously planned this. Carly's terror worsened as the gravity of Drew's error became obvious. If Willow had been drawn away because of his actions, time was running short. Drew, overcome with guilt, decided to make amends, even if it meant putting himself in risk. He began contacting previous connections, attempting to retrace his movements and find the individual responsible. Carly reluctantly agreed to help, but her faith in him had been severely eroded. Late that night, Dante received a tip from an anonymous person who claimed to have witnessed Willow being forced into a black SUV on the outskirts of town. The vehicle was tracked back to a shell firm owned by one of Valentine's competitor investors, who was renowned for adopting extreme techniques to achieve their goals. This confirmed everyone's greatest fears. Willow's absence was not coincidental. It was deliberate. Michael insisted on joining the hunt, but Dante tried to stop him, fearing his emotions might impair his judgment. Carly, meanwhile, remained close to Michael, attempting to console him while privately condemning herself for not discovering Drew's secret sooner. The tension between her and Drew had reached a climax, with every interaction tinged with annoyance, regret, and an underlying concern that they might not be able to get Willow back in time. As morning came over Port Charles, the squad prepared to confront the network Drew had gotten himself involved with. Dante worked with federal officials, while Michael, despite reservations, insisted on becoming a part of the scheme. Carly watched Drew suit up for what could be a violent encounter, her heart in her throat, torn between fury and concern for his safety. When they finally tracked the SUV's signal to an abandoned warehouse outside the city, the confrontation felt like a nightmare. Inside they found evidence that Willow had been there, including a discarded scarf, one of her earrings, and traces of a struggle. Willow, however, had moved to another spot before they arrived. Michael collapsed, his irritation pouring over into rage. He shouted out at Drew, blaming him for the entire ordeal. Carly went between them, attempting to keep the frail group together, but the damage was done. Trust was broken, secrets were revealed, and the clock was still ticking. Dante reassured everyone that they would not give up and promised to find Willow no matter how deep they had to dig. Carly held on to that hope despite the constant gnawing of terror in her heart. Drew, on the other hand, appeared desperate to redeem himself, vowing Michael that he would do whatever it took to bring Willow home safely, even if it meant losing everything. But somewhere in the shadows, the individuals keeping Willow had their own goal, one that went far beyond Drew's error. Willow had overheard something she shouldn't have, and she had now become a piece in a much larger game. And as Carly stood outside the warehouse, peering into the horizon, she realized this was simply the beginning of a perilous battle for her family's survival. The night was peaceful, but there was an unease in the air that neither Jocelyn nor Vaughn could overcome. The events of the previous few weeks had taken a toll on both of them, and while they were finally back in Port Charles, nothing about returning felt comfortable. The recollection of that last confrontation lingered in Jocelyn's thoughts like a nightmare she couldn't shake. Every sound appeared exaggerated, including the creak of the floorboards, the rustle of leaves outside, and the distant buzz of traffic. Her frame exuded the tightness of someone who knew danger had not fully passed, no matter how far they had fled. Vaughn sat near the window, his face black and intent, his palm resting on the edge of the table, as if he was ready to move at the slightest sound. He tried to persuade Jocelyn that everything was under control, and that they'd escaped whatever trap they'd fallen into. But his words lacked conviction now. He'd seen and heard too much, and there were too many unanswered questions about who was behind the upheaval that had uprooted their life. They both knew one thing. Someone was still out there watching and following them. Vaughn sensed it before they boarded the plane home. Subtle movements in crowded areas, automobiles parked where they shouldn't be, strangers making excessive eye contact, and the silent, almost imperceptible presence of danger lurking just behind them. Whoever was after them was not done. Port Charles was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning of something considerably more deadly. Jocelyn rested against the back of the couch, her hands holding the throw pillow in her lap, her breathing shallow as she looked about the dimly lighted room. "It doesn't make sense," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. "Why are they still after us? We did not take anything, Vaughn." Vaughn looked over his shoulder, his jaw tightening as he shook his head. "It's not about what we did, Joss," he stated softly and calmly. "It is about what we know. Someone went to great lengths to keep us in the dark, but the instant we walked into that warehouse, we discovered something we weren't supposed to see. That's why they won't let go." She stared at him, her forehead furrowed, her eyes wide with the dread she'd been attempting to conceal. "Do you suppose it's connected to that shipment? Which one did Mason mention?" "That's precisely what I think," Vaughn said, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "Whoever runs this business has money, muscle, and connections. We stumbled into something much bigger than either of us had envisaged. If they are ready to kill to keep it buried, returning to Port Charles does not guarantee our safety. It just means we're on their land now." A shiver ran up Jocelyn's spine. She recalled the faces she'd seen in that dark, abandoned structure, as well as the whispers of names she recognized but couldn't quite grasp. People associated with Sonny's group, possibly even beyond. There were layers to this, secrets entangled in a web that was rapidly closing around them. She took in a nervous breath and continued, "We have to inform someone. Michael. Or perhaps even Sonny. They have the resources to find out who is behind this." Vaughn hesitated, staring at her for a long time before responding. "Do you really believe they can protect you? Think about it, Joss. If Sonny's guys are involved in this, coming to him could put us in even greater risk. And Michael would try to help, but he'd endanger himself, Willow, and the children. We can't drag anyone else into this until we know who's pulling the strings." Her throat clenched as she realized he was right. This did not make it any simpler to accept. She despised the sensation of being trapped. Every decision they made had implications, and every incorrect move could cost them more than they were willing to risk. The hush between them lasted until Vaughn stood from his chair and began pacing. He despised sitting still when he knew they were being hunted. "I checked the locks twice and installed the cameras outside. But Joss, I swear I saw the same automobile circling the street again when we returned from the store." Jocelyn's fingers gripped the cushion tightly, causing her knuckles to grow white. She wondered if it was a coincidence or if someone was watching her. "What do we do?" she inquired softly, her voice barely steady. "I cannot live like this, Vaughn. I can't keep looking over my shoulder, hoping for anything to happen."